So we all love to pretend the Jedi were these enlightened space monks with infinite wisdom and zero flaws. But let's be honest, half of them were just clueless middle managers with glow sticks and a god complex. And buried somewhere in that elite circle of galactic incompetence was Master Yaddle. Yes, the soft-spoken background Yoda with a perm, whose greatest legacy might just be doing absolutely nothing until it was way too late. Now I know what you're thinking. Wasn't she the one who stood up to Count Dooku and got force-crushed into a pit by Sidious? And sure, that happened. But let's rewind a bit. Because before she decided to finally grow a spine, she spent years rubber-stamping the same disastrous policies that led to a galactic civil war. She wasn't just in the room where it happened. She was part of the reason it happened. You mean to tell me that someone who could sense the darkness in Dooku, who literally had a front-row seat to the slow-motion collapse of the Jedi Order, just sat there blinking and sipping her tea like it was none of her business? And we're supposed to call that wisdom, if anything. Yaddle was like the person who sees the Titanic hitting the iceberg and quietly asks if the violin section knows any upbeat tunes. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon's out here begging the council to pull their heads out of the sand. Obi-Wan's barely holding it together, trying to raise the Chosen One. And Yaddle's vibe is just serene silence. She could have been the Jedi who actually broke rank. The one who called out the blind devotion and political rot. But nah. She just hovered in the corner like the HR rep, who knows the company's toxic, but still hands out wellness brochures. And look, it's not about blaming one Jedi for everything. It's about how the people with the most power often choose the path of least resistance, because it's safer, quieter, and won't make them the subject of a Senate hearing. But the price of that silence was the galaxy itself, and Yaddle, for all her potential, played her part in that quiet collapse. In this video, we're digging into how Master Yaddle was just as blind as Yoda, just as complicit in the Jedi's downfall, and just as tragically too late when she finally decided to act. We'll break down her role in Tales of the Jedi, her silence during the Phantom Menace, and why her legacy isn't one of wisdom, but of willful ignorance in a time that demanded clarity. Okay, so here's the question that no one really wants to ask. Was Master Yaddle actually wise? Or was she just another Jedi Council member sipping the same delusional Kool-Aid as Yoda? We always hear about how rare and respected she was, but the more you dig into her actual decisions, the more it feels like she was just copying Yoda's homework and somehow doing it worse. I mean, come on, she literally had a front-row seat to the Jedi Order's greatest failures and just nodded along like it was all part of the plan. You ever notice how in Tales of the Jedi, she doesn't really challenge the Council's stance until it's already too late? She clearly senses something is wrong with Dooku. She sees the corruption creeping in, and yet she doesn't blow the whistle until after he's fully embraced the dark side and joined Sidious. That's not foresight. That's procrastination dressed up in Jedi robes. And don't even get me started on her total silence in The Phantom Menace. A Sith Lord resurfaces after 1,000 years. Qui-Gon is literally begging for someone to believe him, and Yaddle just sits there like she's at a boring faculty meeting. No passion, no urgency, no attempt to rally support or even question the Council's logic. It's like watching someone calmly sip tea while the building is burning down. She had power, she had knowledge, and she had the same midichlorian Count vibes as Yoda. But what did she do with it? She coasted. She let the momentum of the institution carry her. And when the time came to take a stand before things got out of hand, she hesitated, just like the rest of them. So now I can't help but wonder, was Yaddle really wise? Or was she just another Jedi clinging to a broken system? And if we hold Yoda accountable for being blind to Palpatine, shouldn't Yaddle share in the blame too? It's honestly infuriating when you think about how much potential Yaddle had and how badly she squandered it. The Jedi Council was already a hot mess of bureaucracy and spiritual arrogance, and she had the opportunity to be different. But nope, she just sat there quietly validating the same flawed ideology that led to their downfall. Let's be clear. She wasn't just some background character with no influence. She was a full-on Jedi Master with a seat at the highest table. And she still refused to challenge Yoda or Mace Windu when they dismissed Anakin's emotions or ignored the war's obvious moral decay. It's like the whole council was playing Jedi Survivor on story mode, while the galaxy crumbled around them. It honestly breaks your heart when you realize how close Yaddle was to doing something meaningful, and how badly she failed when it mattered most. Watching her death in Tales of the Jedi isn't just tragic because she dies. It's tragic because she died realizing everything she believed in was already gone. She sees the truth in Dooku's eyes. The pain, the bitterness, the betrayal. And for a moment you can tell she wants to fix it. But by then, it's far too late. The Council already turned him away. The Republic already rotted from the inside. And Yaddle, for all her supposed wisdom, stood by and let it happen. Her final words aren't defiant or powerful. They're soft, almost apologetic. It's like she knows she wasted her chance. like she's trying to take responsibility at the very end. But there's no glory in that. Just quiet regret and a broken heart. And maybe that's what hurts the most. Not that she failed, but that she had to die knowing she could have done more. That if she had spoken louder or acted sooner, maybe Dooku wouldn't have fallen. Maybe the war wouldn't have unfolded the same way. Maybe the Jedi could have been something better. We always talk about lost potential like it's some abstract tragedy. But with Yaddle, it feels deeply personal. She wasn't some distant figure in the galaxy. She was a voice that chose silence, a warrior who waited too long to fight. And yet, in that final moment, you can't help but feel something powerful, because Yaddle did try. She may have failed spectacularly, but at least she stepped into the darkness to face the consequences of her inaction. And not many Jedi had the guts to do that. She could have walked away, stayed silent, kept pretending everything was fine. But instead she confronted the monster she helped create, and there's something strangely noble about that. Something hauntingly beautiful in her choice to face Dooku alone, no matter how foolish or doomed it was. The animation in Tales of the Jedi doesn't just show us her strength, it shows us her humanity, her vulnerability. We see the weight on her shoulders, the sadness in her eyes. And for once, a Jedi who isn't hiding behind doctrine or dogma, but standing raw and real in the face of death. And when she lifts the hangar door, battered and bleeding, to face Sidious and Dooku one last time, it hits different. That's not just Jedi bravery. That's someone trying to right a lifetime of wrongs in one final act of resistance. What if Yaddle's death wasn't just the end of a character, but the start of a lesson the Jedi refused to learn? What if her final act was meant to wake up the Order, to remind them that silence is complicity, and action even late is still better than doing nothing? Imagine if her story had been passed down to Anakin, to Ahsoka, to Luke. What if they saw her not as a failure, but as a warning, a blueprint for how not to repeat the same mistakes? Maybe then the next generation could have made something better out of the rubble. There's something strangely inspiring about her trying to do the right thing, even when it was hopeless. Because that's the essence of Star Wars, right? Hope in the face of overwhelming odds. And for once, Yaddle embodied that. Not perfectly, not wisely, but sincerely. We forget that change often comes from the ones who are part of the problem. The people who finally say, enough is enough. Even if they were too quiet for too long. Yaddle became that person. Just not soon enough to matter. But maybe that flicker of resistance she showed. Maybe that's what lights the spark for something better in the stories that follow. Because if even someone like Yaddle could change course, then maybe the rest of the Jedi could have too. In the end, Yaddle's legacy isn't just one of silence or failure. It's a cautionary tale about the cost of waiting too long to speak up. Her story mirrors Yoda's in so many ways. But where Yoda lived on to see the consequences of his blindness, Yaddle died in the middle of her awakening. She didn't save the galaxy. She didn't stop Dooku. She didn't even get a statue in the Jedi Temple. But her death still means something. Because it marks a moment when the rot within the Order was finally confronted face to face. Not by a chosen one. Not by a rebellion. But by one of their own. And that's the tragedy, really. She was right there the whole time. With the power to change the conversation, to challenge the complacency, and she only found her voice when it was already too late. That's not just sad. It's a reminder of how institutions fail when good people say nothing. But maybe the resolution isn't in her death. Maybe it's in how we remember her now. Not as a wise old alien who said little and did less, but as a figure who tried to wake up, even if she didn't make it in time. Because in Star Wars, the ones who fall trying to fix their mistakes, they still matter. And Yaddle, in all her flawed glory, deserves to be seen for who she really was, not just who the Council pretended her to be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.